Hi everyone, well today's topic is metabolism because I really can't think of many other topics that have more misinformation about them than metabolism. You know, we've all got that super skinny friend who seems to be able to eat whatever they like and do no exercise and never have to be concerned about their weight. And usually what we tend to say is, well, that person must have a really fast metabolism and my metabolism must be really slow and that's why I struggle with my weight. Well, is there really any truth in that? And the truth is that, well, not really. There are small differences genetically between our different metabolisms, but actually it doesn't explain the differences we have in either controlling our weight or in the size that we are. So first of all, an understanding of what exactly metabolism is. It is not a set factor, so it's not a set value. Essentially, metabolism is the rate that you burn energy. So it's the rate of kilojoule or calorie use. Now that changes, of course, throughout the day. You can imagine when you're lying down in bed, you first wake up in the morning, you're not burning as much energy as when you're running for the bus or you're doing the housework or of course, you're in a gym class or doing some exercise. And that gives you a clue that metabolism is not a static thing. So when we look at metabolism, there are essentially three main areas to consider what makes up your overall metabolic rate or the amount of energy that you're using. Now, the biggest part of it, at least 70%, and for some people it's up to 80%, is called your resting metabolic rate. And that is that unit of energy or the amount of energy you're using when you wake up in the morning, you're lying flat in bed. So the amount of energy you're using at rest simply to keep your organs going and for your body to be working. So it's quite extraordinary when you think about it that is 70 to 80% of your overall metabolic rate or your measure of your metabolism. Next up is your activity, so the active metabolism. And that of course is as soon as you start to move. And the degree of intensity of the movement that you're doing, whether it's just a gentle stroll with the dog around the block, whether it's some very vigorous house cleaning, or whether you're in a HIIT class, for example, in the gym, all of those things, of course, will have different levels of energy use. So that's the quickest way to boost your metabolism, is to get moving. And then the third and final part is what we call dietary induced thermogenesis. And that's essentially the amount of energy your body uses to digest and process the foods that you're eating. And there are some minor tweaks that we can make there. So for a second, let's go back to that resting metabolic rate, because that's the biggest part of our overall metabolism. Is there anything that you can do to alter your metabolic rate? Well, the first thing is it's a misnomer to think back to that skinny friend who seems to be able to eat whatever they like. In fact, they don't have a higher resting metabolic rate than you or I have. Because the bigger you are, whether that's bigger with some excess body fat or whether it's bigger with more muscle, you are burning more energy than that smaller person. So that's really important to remember, because if we lose weight, inevitably you become smaller, whether you've lost body fat, muscle, or both. You in fact then need less energy. And that's one of the difficulties with weight loss diets. When we lose weight, your body interprets that weight loss. It actually tries to slow your metabolic rate because it doesn't know that was a healthy change. And it really tries to drive your appetite and drive your metabolism to get you back up to filling those fat cells and being back at the weight you were. So that's one thing to note. As you lose weight, you've actually got to eat less to stay there. And eventually your body does kind of edge out, but of course your metabolism is reduced. You don't need as much energy to move a smaller body across the floor or to walk down the street than a larger body. One thing that is different though, and one thing that can help us, particularly if you're trying to lose a few kilos, is to maintain your muscle mass. So we know that muscle is a much higher activity organ than something like fat. So muscle is burning much more energy even at rest. So if I've got two people exactly the same weight, but one is fatter with less muscle and the other has more muscle, they are burning more energy because that muscle is burning more energy even when they're sitting on the sofa. So that's why you'll hear me talk a lot about the benefits of strength training and exercise, because that helps you to maintain your your muscle mass, particularly as you're losing weight. And for those of us getting older and wanting to age really well, making sure that we maintain our muscle mass and keeping that muscle very active tissue, meaning it works very well, is what will help us to avoid weight gain as we get older and of course to stay strong. So that's the biggest thing that you can do to change your resting metabolic rate. The activity part of the equation is simple. simply be more active. And the more activity that you can build in, the better. So it can either be short in time with high intensity, or you can do longer duration type exercise depending on how much time you have. Find the exercise that suits you. Now, the final part was our dietary induced thermogenesis. And in fact, you can also make some changes here. And that's why high protein diets have thought to work in the past, is because it takes a little bit more energy to break down, metabolize, and utilize protein in the body than it does for either carbohydrate or fat. Fat is in fact the easiest of the macronutrients to digest, absorb, and to store because it can simply be stored in adipose tissue. So that's why a slightly higher protein intake might be valuable, because it helps to boost that dietary induced thermogenesis. Other things are things like spices, so chili, and these sorts of things can actually raise your metabolic rate ever so slightly. But I hasten to add that those changes are very, very small and unlikely to really make a difference to your weight. But nevertheless, all of these little things may add up to make a difference. Now, just one final word though, that doesn't mean go crazy on protein. If you overeat protein and you still end up with way too many kilojoules, it's not going to work. But it's why I suggest using my Dr. Joanna Plate that includes a good portion of protein in each meal. One, because it helps you to control your appetite and to eat slightly less, but also to help to boost that dietary induced thermogenesis and overall push up your energy expenditure a little bit. And finally, that protein might help you to maintain your muscle mass, or if you're strength training, to actually gain a little bit of muscle mass. So there you go. Remember, the key take-home point of metabolic rate is that the bigger you are, the higher your metabolic rate. So as you lose weight, you do need to eat less or move more, or preferably do both, in order to maintain that smaller body. But most importantly is to maintain or build muscle mass and eat really, really well to help your body to be kind of stoking the engine, making sure that you burn as much energy, which is measured as kilojoules, as possible. I hope you find that helpful. See you next time.